Morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to say that I was able to get my very good friend and colleague here to tell you all about his experiences, but mostly about his amazing way with color. Please help me give him a warm welcome. Brett Mickan.
Thank you, Diane. It's great to be here to talk about this again today. So hopefully today will be a bit exciting. I hope what's going to happen is I'll make you think about using color in a different way. And I'm sort of going to go through how I use color and sort of explain how I get that. So when Diane first asked me to talk about color in interiors, you know, it's weird because it's so intrinsic to me the way I use it. You know, it's such a natural process that I sort of had to look back and analyze how I come up with colors. So it's sort of talking you through with a whole lot of pictures to explain, hopefully, how that works. And also, color in interior to me, it's not like it's a certain stage of the project. Like, it's not like I'll do the space planning and then I'll say, okay, what's the color scheme going to be? And, you know, like that. Color is part of everything. So what you have to really think is color can also be the shape and the texture and the furniture. You can't separate it. You can't go, okay, I'm going to do a blue room and now I'll add some furniture to it. Everything becomes a color. You know, also when you're looking at interiors, which I'll show you today, you have to look at what clues are already there in the colors. Like, for example, in this room, we've got the orangey brown on the floor, we've got the black of the window frames, we've got the white. So there's a lot of colors that are already working with that, you know, maybe people don't normally see when you're looking into a space. So I'll start the first slide. Am I supposed to go to here?
Just switch it on at the side there.
Side of this? Yeah. Yes. Okay. This one, I used to do theatre design before I went into interior design. So this is maybe a strange one to show you to start off with because it's very non-coloured. But to me, colour is sort of everything. It's light and texture and everything. And the reason I show you this is because some of the tricks that I learned from theatre design I think are really relevant to interior design. So this was a play I did in Newcastle called Southern Steel. It was about the steel industry. So the colours all came, you sort of have the influence of steel and factories, so all the greys came from that. Even though this is a black and white photograph, it was pretty much that colour. And I think what this shows you about interiors is the way you can break up a space. You know, often houses nowadays have that combined living, dining, lounge space. So how in an open space you can break it up into different rooms. So this sort of teaches you that lesson. It's the flooring that sort of breaks it up. When we look at this area here where the bed is, this shows, you know, when you focus in, it's about the light, it's about a couple of pieces of furniture that talk about that room within the space. So the same way as if you'd have like a big combined dining living room, maybe a rug will ground that living area, maybe the way that's lit. So it talks about that space within the space. And then it's just that combination of tones. There's a lot of different colors in there with the grays, but it's that combination of tones that all works together. Also in lighting design, you sort of learn tricks like how different lights make you feel, how different lights look on people's skin. So if I wanted to make somebody look really healthy in interior, I'd put like a peach colored gel over the interior so it makes everybody look fresh and alive. So those sort of colors help with that. And then like blue colors, you know, when it's dramatic or cold. And so it's all those basic tricks that you get from the theater that will show you, will teach you that. There's that room again. I can't remember the actress's name. Anyway, then I'm going to take you through some of the projects and show you when you come along to a home, how you interpret what the color scheme may be. And I think it's really about finding a project-relevant color scheme. And to make a color scheme not date so much, you really have to find pieces of influence that work with the existing house so that when the trend is over, if you're using a trend, there's still a reason why that color has come from there. That may sound a little confusing, but I'll explain to you. So anyway, this house here, this is obviously before. What you have to do is you have to look at a project and see, what do I see and what is my eye catching? It's always the most important thing, even if you're in a room. Just think, what is my eye catching? What do I want to emphasize and what do I want to disappear? So to me here, this is this beautiful frilly woodwork, but all I'm seeing is these dark lines. You know, it's that combination of colours there. It's hiding the bricks. There's some beautiful stained glass windows there that you're not really seeing. It's all about these dark lines here. And the funny thing about this client was she came to me and she's a real minimalist. She likes white and clean and clear, and she bought this really frilly house. So it's sort of like, how am I going to make that work for this client? So if you look just at this side here, there's this beautiful little turret too. So I have these beautiful architectural features. You can see that amazing stained glass, which I think shows there. So I have so many colours to draw from there, and I'm looking at that combination of colours too. So to me, even though I'm seeing all these blues and purples and everything, I'm also seeing a lot of negative space. There's a lot of light colour. So my balance of colour will be little pops of colour, but with a lot of light colour as well. And then you have these wonderful influences of the plaster ceilings, and that's really about texture. So texture can really be part of the whole colour scheme too there. So it's that play of light on that texture. And then this is the tessellated tile out the front of the house. So another way to look at what the pattern is, what the colour is. So these are all my influences that's going to help me draw this colour scheme that will be relevant to this project. So this is looking down on the front veranda. You see the tessellated tile, you're looking down into that turret. This is before, so all I did was really quite simple. I just painted all the work out in a neutral. So now what you're seeing is that frilly work just looks like a texture, and you're seeing those beautiful windows, you're seeing that amazing warm colour of the brick, and then the tessellated tile. So it's really just highlighting what's already there, just simplifying it. And then what we did in the turret is the turret was like a little hexagon shape, and they're going, what are we possibly going to do in here? So I built that day bed, which is exactly half the size of the turret, and this is a David Hicks fabric. So it's a contemporary outdoor fabric, but it's really playing on that pattern from the tessellated tile. So I'm not pretending there's not pattern. I'm taking the influence from that pattern and that colour and continuing it. So then obviously this is a contemporary element within it, but it really feels like it belongs in that house. So it may be cool and on trend, but it looks like it's coming from the tile and everything like that, and that's going to give it longevity. And then that's a beautiful little space that the little girls like to go in and read, so it's very cute. Okay, this is the main living room here. So again, this is before, and so you look at here and you're saying, what am I seeing? It's like, you do see the stained glass windows, but it's that play of the dark and the light here. The walls are too prominent in this space. The client originally said, okay, we've got to remove those fireplace mantles. They're original, they're lovely, but they sort of look a bit simple. So I said, no, we can make that work. And in the hearth and the tiles, I think it's very important to keep as many original features as you can in these old homes, or make it look like you are. But somebody had done a renovation at some time, and these are not the original tiles. So I thought, I can change it without feeling bad about that. So what we did in that space, and also, as often people do, that horrible brass traditional light, which is not actually original to the house, but people think it's an old interior, I need old things to work with the interior, so it doesn't really work. So this is what we did in it. So you can sort of see that I've changed the tiles there, so it's just a simple subway tile there, but it's sort of a period sort of colour, but making the walls neutral, it's all about that beautiful texture. All the cabinetry is built in with the skirting, so it's sort of like all our storage sort of disappears, but it's just that really simple line. And because we've neutralized all that texture, all the pieces we replace within this can sort of be like a gallery, like a whole mix of artistic sort of different periods of pieces now belong in this space, like a gallery would. So now it obviously says Federation House, but it also says contemporary. Yeah, so it's really lovely to have that mix, and you can sort of see the pops of colour and the neutral, so it's sort of my influence from the stained glass windows coming out in there. And also I think it's very important that a house should sort of look accidentally beautiful. So these pieces don't really all go together, but it just looks like the clients maybe have collected all these really amazing things and put them all together, so hopefully it feels like that. This is what we did in the hall. So we've already got that beautiful stained glass, the wonderful architecture. We actually copied the ceiling panels. All the plaster ceilings were reproduced, and even in the new part of the house, we reproduced plaster ceilings so it looked original. But we didn't need to add any detail here. So I've just simply picked up on the colour and the pattern with that armadillo rug, sort of playing with that tessellated tile pattern again. And then just choosing, because there's so many colours in that stained glass window, and also because hand-blown glass has a whole variation of colours, whatever colour you put in there that's around the range of those colours is going to look like you've matched it. So the fact that we have these spun aluminium blue lights. They're very contemporary, but it's sort of that traditional line of having 3 lights down there. So again, it feels like contemporary, but feels like it's in a traditional home. So this is my interpretation of, we did a big extension out the back of the house. So I wanted the extension to feel like it married the front of the house too. So this is my interpretation of the colors and fabrics that I used in the back room. So you can sort of see there's a whole lot of colors coming out from the stained glass windows. There's the carpet, there's the marble, a lot of pattern. And this is how it came out in the back room. So again, you can see it's a lot of neutral, but there's a beautiful pops of color. It's all ground by this rug, which you'll see in this photograph. The green and blue is really about connecting to what you're seeing outside, the pool and the garden. Because that room is so open to that, it really needs to flow through there. Like, I had a real problem with this client at first. They're going, well, where is that green and blue coming from? And she also hated green. So I had to just say, it's going to disappear. It's going to just feel really natural. So once it went in, and she's like, well, I can't even imagine what other color would go there. But again, it's sort of that collection of furniture. We've got a lot of seating in there, but simply by building in all the drawers or with the skirting board there. So it's really given a really big room. And then this connects on this side, like here where I'm standing, wrong. Or maybe I don't show it. Okay. Well, there is a dining room and there's a kitchen connecting to that. So you can sort of see all the fabric colors popping out in that. So this is the little girl's room in that house. This is where it's sort of on trend with sort of the peaches and the pinks and the salmons that are happening a lot now. But because I've taken the color influence from the stained glass, it sort of feels like it belongs and sort of feels like it's part of the house. This is where, often you have clients who have children and the children want to choose their colors. So the little girl said to me, because what color would you like? And she said she wanted a purple room. So this is my version of purple room. It's a slight mauve. So it's purple that works for the adults. So it's just sort of an off-white. Those colors like pinks and mauves and those really strong colors, you only need a tint of it. Like you look at the sample and it will look white, but as soon as it's on a whole room, it will feel like that. And because we did this peach pinstripe like on the curtains, it's picking up on all those beautiful soft colors in that stained glass. And the idea of this rug, the client's little girl chose this too. I mean, parents to different degrees like their children to be involved, so you sort of give them very limited choices. So it was from like 2 or something, but it's lovely because now there's a whole lot of different colors there, because what children tend to do is they have lots of stuff. Little girl has shelves of trays. So if we had a really minimal, simple room, everything in there is going to look out of place. So by having a lot of busyness and having a lot of variation of colors, all her little treasures are going to look more part of the whole space. And this was a custom beanbag we made of that floral fabric, so she likes her room. And then this is in the bathroom, which was a completely new space, but I wanted it to feel like I'm connected to the story of the house. So we did the plaster ceilings to match. And here it's really about, when we looked at that original plaster ceiling detail, it's that play of color and light and that full-on texture. So I'm playing with texture with the white space. So this is hexagonal tile here. It's this crystal bulb here. So there's all these little textural things that link back to the period of the house. This is a tile from, it's a concrete tile with a pattern. So you think about the tessellated tiles were originally in the house. These concrete tiles are very much a trend now, but it sort of feels like it belongs to the house. And then carrying that simple line of a cabriole cabinet in that contemporary cabinet. So it gives it another traditional element there. Again, when I was showing the client, I said, this is going to be the color of the cabinet. She's going, why do I want this dirty yellow colored cabinet in here? But it's like, to me, this is marrying to the brass. It warms up that very neutral interior. It makes that built-in cabinet feel like it's a piece of furniture, which goes back to the history of the period of the house where it would have just been cabinets would sit in there, but still feels very contemporary. Okay, this house here, this wasn't a very big budget. The client came to me and she had been stalking me on social media for a while, and she said, some people want to go on a really great holiday or have a great car or something like that. My dream is to have you design my place. So that was lovely. So I took that on. It was too flattering. So this is her house. It was in the North Shore in Sydney. And you look at that and go, okay, that's really dated, what am I going to do? So you have to look at the house and think, okay, what are my influences? What am I going to bring out in this? Now, the client really loved mid-century sort of furniture. So I look at that and I think, even though this is a reproduction Cape Cod, it sort of feels maybe a little bit Hollywood Hills, you know, Hollywood Regency, a bit of that coming in here. So then I have to look for other design clues. This is the inside. It's that cheap standard door that was done in these 60s houses, but it's like, I'm not changing that. The budget wasn't there to do anything structurally. So I'm thinking, how am I going to make this work? So I'm looking at the line of the window. I'm looking, what they've done is they think that painting everything white is good because it just makes this small space feel open, but all it does is it just confuses this bad architecture. So you have to use color here to divide the spaces, basically. So I don't know if the next slide is the after. Yes. So what I did there is these spaces that connect everything, I've done in that sort of charcoal grey. So it's the grey connects, and then the room you're looking into becomes the white. So they're the spaces you want to focus people on. So you're not looking at the walls in here. Then playing on the line of this bad door, I've done this armadillo rug, you know, in some sort of poppy mid-century colours. So again, it's a contemporary thing, but it's playing on those lines. Mid-century cabinet. This is a vintage 1930s mirror, so it's that faceted, beautiful glass. So it looks again like you're picking up on that line. So rather than this being like something that's looking dated, it looks like something that's part of the whole scheme. And then you can see in the mirror here, which is over on this wall, that beautiful vintage sconce is a Sculptural from LA. But it gives you that mid-century, gives you that beautiful sharp line. It's a mixture of the chrome and the gold, so it's bringing in those warm tones. And then this fabulous portrait here. The client was from Eastern Europe somewhere, and when she was a little girl, it was a portrait that was painted from her. So cool. So we hung that in there. She was a bit embarrassed, but I loved it. I dug it out of the cupboard upstairs. Yeah. And then also because the floors are, they sort of did a bit of a renovation and they ebonized all the floors already. So it's like the floors are disappearing and, you know, they actually are too dominant in the space. So where we want to emphasize anything, we put these rugs and then it makes, that's what you see. This was the room that connected off that. This is where they painted it dark. This was the room the husband loved to go in because he thought it was really relaxing, he could read his paper. It's horrible. You know, look at that. You know, you're just seeing, a lot of people in renovations think, okay, what have I got to do? It's a small space, I'll open it up as much as I can. So they've opened this area up and opened the area up to the kitchen, and what they've created is just lots of hallways. There's no division of rooms anywhere. So how are we going to do that without doing anything structurally? And they've got this cheap bookcase. It's really lovely that there's a bookcase in the room here, that they can have books and things, but I don't have the budget to replace the entire thing. So how am I going to make this look decent? And at the moment, these dark colours disappear in the floor. It's very uncomfortable. It's like, who wants to sit in there? And what's it saying? It looks like dress to sell. On the other side of that room off the hall, I also have this. I have the Berber carpet. I have the panelled walls. Okay, but I have to look at that and think, okay, what is the asset? I think, okay, that panelled wall is a really hot trend at the moment. Berber carpet is a really hot trend. So if I'm drawing on that, I just have to make these elements that I have feel like they belong and become part of it. So what we did in that room is, so by painting the walls out white, the cabinet suddenly disappears and it becomes about what you put in that cabinet. So it looks really lovely. And it's also the same color as the windows, so you're just sort of seeing that view. I'm extending the height of these standard rooms by doing the S-fold track. It's very architectural. It's all the way to the ceiling. So it's just giving you these big planes of fabric. So it's beautiful in the day. It sort of frames that window. And at night when you close it, it's a really lovely cocoon space to sit in. We're grounding it again with the rug. In this case, where the wife really loved mid-century, the husband liked tribal. So it's a mixing a bit of him in there too. So it's that Moroccan-looking rug. And then a few mid-century pieces. This is the matching pair to that Sculptural sconce. So you look through from the hall and you see the other one there. So it highlights this little awkward area at the side there with art. It makes it look like it's purpose. You can't really see in the picture there, but the fabric on those vintage chairs is a lime green and off-white houndstooth. So it's really cool and really poppy. Because I had young kids, I think it's important to have fun colours there too. And then it becomes a space that you totally want to sit in it. It's really lovely, just that gentle play. And the fact that This is a Jardin sofa. It's it's called the Nook. It has a really mid-century line, so it's a contemporary piece, but it still feels like it belongs to that period, and it's just a beautiful wool felt on there. So it's not like this room is completely girly or anything. It belongs to both the couples, but it's just that lovely little mix. Yeah. And then this is looking the other way. Look how great this looks now. The paneling and the Berber looks like it's part of that whole look. And with using a few mid-century pieces in the teak, it sort of picks up on the idea of that paneling too. So suddenly something was really ugly and dated. Rather than rip it out, I'm not left with much there. You want some character in the house. You use what you have. So now I'm just making it look like it belongs. Yeah. So, and then this was the only thing that they had sort of bought when they tried to do the renovation themselves at first. She'd sent away on some mailing list to get this wallpaper. So she had that one wallpaper. Now this is where they've opened it to the kitchen, they've opened it to the room we've just looked at. So this is sort of, I guess, supposed to be the dining room, but it's like, what a stupid space. It's sort of and this is the entrance to the family room here. It really doesn't work at all. So how am I going to make that feel like a room there, but it still has to have really good traffic flow. So, and I've got to draw from that wallpaper, which is sort of basically where my main colour scheme came from. So this is what I did. So first of all, we ground with this beautiful vintage Murano chandelier, which I had chromed. It wasn't a brass. And what that does is it works like a sculpture. And because you're looking through that space the whole time, it doesn't block your view. But at night, it's so beautiful, it glows and sort of lights through the whole space. And it sort of feels like, which was totally accidental really, I just bought it because I thought it was wonderful, feels like the drooping of those branches on the trees. This was a couple of vintage sideboard cabinets I found, which were actually in that colour at an auction. So it feels mid-century, gives her tons of storage and sort of focuses you in on that space. The vintage Parker table is extension, so you can have it there as a smaller table so you have the traffic flow. If you have more people, you can extend it. And then the use of these chairs with the open backs, with the bamboo backs, means that they feel large and ground the space, but you can still look through them because this space is totally, a view through the whole house. And also playing with it at different colours, because there are a lot of different colours here. If we had one set, it may be too heavy there. So it's that combination in that space. Excuse me. Just take some water. Okay. So then we come out of that room, and this is their extended room above the garage. It's awful again, because the plan is so terrible. How am I going to work that? And all I can do is decorate here. I can't do anything structurally. So I have the entrance here from the dining room. I have windows here to the backyard. I have an entrance to the garage there. The fireplace is in the corner. One little window on that side. So it's totally awkward. Nothing works, but I have to see, okay, what are the assets in this room? What can I see? What can I make the most of? And what is my eye catching? So at the moment, all my eyes is going to this big floor. That's all I'm seeing. It's so dark, and it's making the room look low and small and awkward. I look here, the slate on the fireplace is just looking really dated. There's a bit of moulding on this fireplace, but it just sort of doesn't really belong anywhere. So how do I make it married? So what I did, painted all that white, and then you see I've taken the line of the moulding of the fireplace and I've continued it around the walls. So this awkward architectural space, it's just really simple divided squares of moulding. So I'm evening up the architecture by dividing it evenly with these squares. Now the squares are different sizes because the walls are different sizes, but they feel sort of similar. So visually it's calming the space down. Suddenly, once we do this big, beautiful plush, it's just a cut carpet, off-the-roll carpet in grey, it lowers the floor there and grounds that space and doesn't make it so dark and oppressive, and makes the slate look really quite cool, mid-century and fabulous, because it now fits in with the floor. The television that was there before, we put the same vintage cabinet, but we've had to, because you have to have the television here, and I think televisions are important, how are we going to make that feel like it belongs? And that's from other black elements. This vintage table, the lamp, the fireplace. Now it just feels like it's an even balance around the room rather than you're just focusing on that. And then it's this wonderful mix of modern and mid-century furniture. These chairs are, I don't know how many would remember back to that, but it's the his and hers chairs where you used to buy pairs where one would be larger for the man and one would be shorter for the woman. So they're just a vintage chair that we've reupholstered, and it gives a lovely little story, the fact that they sort of don't match. And there's enough architecture in that, in the chairs, that you still want it to feel modern, so it's just that solid block fabric. We didn't really need any pattern on there. And then the wonderful taxidermy, which ever since going to South Africa, I love taxidermy. I'm not into killing rare animals or anything like that, but it's just, to me, it's sort of like a wood or a marble. It's just that lovely natural texture of, the fur and the colour and everything. Now, a lot of clients don't let me use them, so when I can, I do. Yeah. And then looking sort of the other way. So it's really lovely. This fabulous fabric from Scalamandre. It's that real mid-century bold, but the window's small, so it's like it makes the window much bigger. Again, it gives you height because of the dimension and the cross line on that pattern, so it's giving you scale. And everything is ground by what we want to see now. So that big, beautiful painting there, it's lovely. So we're telling the eye where we want it to look now. The room isn't with that floor, so it's all about controlling the view. Okay, this house is another Federation house I did. So I'm looking at this, and again, I'm saying, what are my clues? We've got the tessellated tile there again, a lot of colour. There's a lot of sandstone. There's a brick. There's not so much frill on this. It's a lot simpler. There is this the stained glass window, which is the Art Nouveau sort of a look. We've got the slate. I go inside. This was a part of the bathroom we actually demolished, but I'm sort of looking for some colour clues. There's some pinks here, some blues, the texture, the subway tile is something that talks about the house. This is the hallway. This is, you can't see the fixture there, but this is another one of those houses where somebody thought old house, old fixtures. So what they did is lovely sort of plastic brass, Victorian-looking fixtures, really accented the Federation period. Yeah, and again, this was a young family, and they didn't want to live in some sort of dark old house, so it needed to be light and bright and fun for them. But we had some lovely sort of details there, but it's a lot simpler. So this is what we did in there. So because there was so much architecture, neutralizing the walls, it's sort of just like a handmade paper sort of a color. It's not a white, but then you sort of see these beautiful features. And I had a couple of custom rugs made here. Beyond this door is actually the extension of the house, but we sort of repeated the details, and then carrying through that rug, which was some of the colors we used in the house that are sort of to lead you out to the back of the house. And that simple repetition of lights. There. This is the dining room. So again, it's sort of like that faux period mahogany furniture because it's an old house. All it does is look dark. That is a beautiful stained glass window, but you don't see it at all, so really awful. But I wanted it, a dining room is one of those spaces to me like a powder room where you can really go crazy on the design, because the only time you're going to be in there is like, guests using the powder room, or if you're dining and conversation, it's about that. You don't have to live there. It doesn't have to be calm. It can be a bit crazy because, it's a vibrant space. So this is what we did in it. So this is a contemporary paper from Porter's, but it really has that influence of a period sort of space. And because this room is so big and the scale is so high, that these dark colours help you feel cocooned in that space. And the curtains there, you don't need any privacy there. It sort of looks out to the side of the house. It's a dining room. So they're just panels, and they're in a beautiful wool, and they're puddling to the ground. So it's just emphasising that height. It's framing that window, making it look a lot grander than it is, and sort of framing that beautiful stained glass. Then I've used a contemporary crystal chandelier there, but it sort of feels like maybe what you'd have in a dining room. And then the pieces of furniture, to me, this Federation Arts and Crafts is really all about handcrafted. So the story came through, this is an original Jardin table, but it's those joints of that old arts and crafts, handcrafted furniture, the mid-century Hans Wagner dining chairs. So it's those joints, the handmade, the wood, the leather, the natural finishes that are just feeling very arts and crafts. And picking up on the colours from the stained glass there. Even this, the idea of a wall light, the sconce, is very sort of traditional, but that's a very simple just glass tube, so it's a modern version of a wall light. So the idea of traditional features, but just in contemporary pieces. This is looking back the other way from the dining room. Now this is where they've tried to be period again. Unfortunately, they ripped out the original fireplace. It's a Federation home, and they've replaced it with this grand marble copied fireplace, which is awful. It looks totally out of place. And then this plastic brass mirror and plastic sconces, which are really lovely, and it really makes it feel soft and beautiful. So what we did is I went to a second-hand store, a reclaimed building store, and found an old fireplace and the hearth from the period. So put that in. Those tiles were actually already on it. Luckily, under the house, when we were excavating, we found this great big piece of slate, which may have been from there originally. So now the fireplace is beautiful, but it's not so much about the fireplace. You see these beautiful windows. And what often happens in period homes is people add on to them as they go. And so there's a story. I don't want to pretend that that story doesn't exist. You want to emphasize that. So if you saw in the dining room there was that really floral sort of Art Nouveau stained glass, this is an extension done, 20 years later, and it's got that sharp line of the decor. So it's playing on those two things, but it's like how we're going to link that with the color. And you can see this room is really light. To me, again, that's that handcrafted sort of idea of the rush matting there. So this is looking from the dining room to the living room, what we saw before. You can see those beautiful deco doors, but so dark. So when we did it, this is what we get. So you're looking from the dining room, looking through. And this is where there's another clue from theatre design, where you have to see vistas beyond, how you're going to look between one room to another. And so it's sort of like, I think landscapers do it a lot, when there's garden rooms and you look through hedges and you see a lake. We all have lakes on our properties. So this is really lovely. So when you're sitting in the dining room, you can look through and you look at this giant oil painting, and this is where the house talks about who lives there. These clients have a house in the Southern Highlands, so that's an oil painting of the Southern Highlands. So when we're sitting there, we look through and see that beautiful colour. And the pillows on here, even though that sofa is very contemporary and simple, the pillows are crewel work, so that really hand-woven sort of fabric that sort of looks like something that could be traditional. And then looking back the other way, you look through and you see when they were met in Bondi. So that's a photograph by Rex DePan of Bondi Beach. So it's lovely. It talks about them. And so whichever way you're sitting, you look through and see this beautiful little view. So original architecture. It feels like it belongs. It's totally about the client, and it's bringing through a lot of colour. Now this was the original bathroom, which was demolished. So following the clues, I'm looking at the subway, so I'm thinking there was already a subway tile, I can use that, and the blues, and so this is what I did. And also with using the tessellated tile from the front of the house, so it's the same tessellated tile that you'd use in a Federation home, but I've done it in a very contemporary pattern. So because the space was a little awkward, it's all just blue, and I've done that white half tile line to sort of ground my sitting space or standing space within that space, so it evens off an uneven space. This is a custom cabinet. Now it looks like, it's blue to go with the rest of the space, but when you look at the tile next to that colour, it totally doesn't match at all. And that's what you want to do. You want to do colours that are in the same family, but they don't work together really. They don't match, because then everything sort of belongs, and when you have pieces out, it sort of gives it that sort of energy and that balance. If you start to match, a lot of designers would say, okay, this is my main colour, these are my two accent colours, and they go around with their swatch and their fabric and try to match everything. Okay, you put that in a room, it may look lovely and calm, it may not have much of a personality, but it may look nice, but as soon as anything goes in that space that's not that hue, it looks wrong. If you do a whole mix of colours in that same sort of area, as you put other pieces in, they feel like they belong, and it also feels a bit accidental, gives it a bit of a personality. This is a back extension. Now, obviously this is a contemporary space because it's so big, but I kept the line of the ceiling as you went through. On the side we don't see here where the camera is, it all looks out onto the garden. So you can see there's quite a large space. There's almost a metre above all the windows. It wrapped all the way around. So what would happen if that space was white? All you're going to see is those walls. It's not really going to focus you around the outside. So by doing it this deep green, it sort of links back to the tradition of a Federation home, but it makes all the walls disappear, and all you see is the view, and you see these little vignettes within this space. It grounds this open space. So when we look at the kitchen here, often a kitchen as part of a whole space just feels like it's taking over the room. But what I've done is even though it is a built-in kitchen, I've tried to design it so it's separate elements with the period house would be. So it's like the change in colour, like the blue of the island, because we had these giant refrigerators at the back, sort of making it in that grey tone helps make them disappear a little bit. You know, using the marble here, where you've got those beautiful colours coming out on the marble, those natural colours, mixing the texture. But on the main surface area, it's a Caesar stone, so it's very practical for the family. And then I love, again, having little glimpses of views through to other areas, surprises. So you look through into the butler's pantry, and it's like this bright red. All the cabinets are white. And on the window, there's this fabulous, cool little fabric on the Roman blinds. So even though it's a space not a lot of people use, you don't want to ignore those spaces. So it's a little adventure as you go through these different spaces. Then this is talking about, like those first houses I showed you, there's a lot of clues, there's a lot of colour cues to draw from. But sometimes we don't have so much. The architecture doesn't have a lot of detail, not a lot to draw from. Especially in contemporary architecture, it would be quite minimal. So it's like, how do we get a colour scheme? So on this house, as unfortunately sometimes happens, well, let's just say that I think the best projects are when the architect and the designer are working together from the very beginning. So you can have a totally integrated space. You can be thinking from the inside out, outside in. But a lot of the time what happens is we get the project after the architect's finished, or often they'll say, okay, come and put your pillows in, here you go. It's like, so I got this home, and the client had been working with this architect for about 7 years, developing this land, and the house was just coming to completion. It's this big, beautiful home, but it's sort of like quite stark. And the clients had sort of tried to do the interior themselves, and they thought, okay, it's very modern. Okay, what do we need? We need white leather and chrome. It's going to be really great. But they were saying, it's feeling a bit cold. It's really open, this space, and I want it to feel cozier. So I go into this house, and it's really open, really light, but I want to respect the architect's vision. I think it's very important. I'm not going to fight the architecture. And they like neutral, and I had to fight the architect to go from white to off-white on the walls, but that's fine. It's about that. But I don't want a flat, colourless space. So when you look out of the house, you looked on this view of all this bush and these trees. So I showed the client, the ghost gums that were out on the window, and I said, look at this. This is neutral, but there's hundreds of colours there. There's greys and taupes and greens and blues and browns. There's so many things you can draw from. So we are going to do neutral. We are going to respect it and be modern like you want it to be, but it's not going to be one colour. So this is sort of what we did. So it's still very neutral, but it's all about texture and light. So it's this beautiful wool and silk rug here. It's sort of the dark colours. There's gold in that lamp. This is a beautiful textured houndstooth wool fabric on the sofas. This is a blue and there's a green. The colours do look quite washed out in this picture, but it's a whole lot of different colours that just sort of still neutral but don't feel flat and cold. It's giving you that texture. And then this is in the family room too. This rug is a llama rug, so it's that natural colour of the llama, of wool, so it has a lot of greys and taupes and things in it. And then using contemporary pieces. Obviously, the kitchen was there, so I have to work with that. So you have to balance the amount of dark, strong colours to what's existing there, so it belongs. So this sofa in this beautiful golden wheat stripe. And that pillow there to me sort of looks like the bush, the gum leaves and everything like that. So it's a lot of different colours there, but it still feels very neutral and natural, but not cold, warms it up. And then in the bedroom, this is what we did here. This is very funny with this client because they said to me, everything was electronic blinds and just blinds, and they said, we hate curtains, we don't want any curtains. And then they end up with masses of meterage of this puddling drape, which was sort of a little bit of an accident because it was pure linen. I didn't know it was going to puddle that much, but embrace it. I think it's beautiful, and they love that room now. It's sort of like being in a fabulous blue harem of Italian linen drape, so it's gorgeous. And so when you close that off, you're sort of like tented in this cocoon. But it's all just about those soft fabrics. This is an art silk rug, so it's amazing on the feet. You've got to think about texture and how tactile a bedroom will be. And just a little bit of mix of the old furniture. And this is a metal table that sort of looks like sticks, so it sort of is linking to outside. You see the beautiful trees beyond, and then that looks down to the water. So it's still keeping it very neutral and personal, but comfortable, and you're seeing the architecture, but it's not cold. Another property. This is in Berry, New South Wales, down on the south coast. And when you go outside, you're looking at these beautiful vistas and tree-lined countryscapes. And the client came to me with this house. It's a beautiful contemporary house, but it's just really modern on this hill here. It has incredible vistas. The husband goes, "Oh my God, it's amazing, it's modern, I'm never gonna have to do anything, I love it, it's perfect." The wife who had an English background said, "It looks like a factory on a hill." And it was even worse when it was dressed to sell because it had white furniture and one lime rug and something like that. So it's sort of like, are we ever going to make this space feel cozy? Because this was the bottom floor, so there was a pool beyond here, and so there was this much on the other side again, which is the dining room and kitchen, so a big, long room, all windows, so it really did look like a factory. So what I have here to work with, I mean, I have the beautiful view, obviously, but I also have this amazing sandstone floor. But the mistake they made here is they've painted the walls white, which makes it really stark. So all I did was paint the walls sandstone color, so just changing it. And all these side walls here, all the way along, I've upholstered with linen panels. So it's giving you that natural light texture, but really gives you that warmth and envelops you in that space. This is another art silk rug, but it's sort of in ribs, so it's sort of picking up on those wheat fields or something. And then it's a whole lot of soft neutrals in there. So I don't want to fight the view, but I want to make it feel cozy. And so now you sit in there and it just feels really lovely and inviting. You can have your, 15 closest friends around. And with the fireplace here, originally you saw it was like this blue-grey. So I'm still picking it up, but all I did was change it to that really brown-grey coming out of the landscape. So it's still highlighting it, but it feels a lot more natural and closer to the rest of the tones in the room. And then at night, this is what it looks like. So it's just such a beautiful, lovely, cozy space. So it's really great. So the client was very happy. And then this is where I wanted to put taxidermy again. But the client said no. She was saying it's going to look like an abattoir. So from then on, that room was always called the abattoir. And I got a wooden head in there. Yeah. So again, it's just sort of playing with the fabrics. There's some yellow in the fields below. This is sort of like a little silk brocade and some wool textures. So these are commercial main fabrics, but then little bits of pops and plays of colour and texture. This is looking the other way. So I'm standing in the living room here, and that's looking down the dining room and kitchen. So I already have that big block of colour that's existing for the dining room. So how am I going to marry that? How am I going to make it feel like a cosy dining space? And again, that white wall. So this is what we did. I upholstered the wall again. Contemporary furniture, a little bit of mid-century, but this rug here, when I originally showed it to her, she says it looks like Grandpa's slippers. But I think that's great. You sort of have to think of those connotations about warmth and cozy and blankets and Grandpa. It's like a little place you want to go and sit. So I think that's really lovely. And then bringing the bit of Aboriginal there. And then they play these contemporary chairs too that linked back to that bit of yellow on the other side. But then the kitchen is sort of married there, picking up on the dark colours here to the grey there. And then the light plays in there. But you can sort of see the sandstone colour now going in with the linen. It just feels so natural and so warm. Even though we've got the contemporary pieces, it's totally lost that stark nature of it, but it's still very neutral and beautiful space to spend time in. This was the bedroom. This is where you're given that sort of strange architecture. I'm given those big triangular ceilings and everything, so it's very contemporary. This is where you show that you don't need to do a lot to make a house feel sort of traditional. So it's like one traditional chair and one cabinet, and that already says, oh, old farmhouse, but it's not fighting the contemporary architecture. Closing it in with this soft pelmet and the curtains so it cocoons you again in that room. The walls here just went from a white to like a soft grey blue. These are vintage lights. They're vintage lights I bought at an auction, so they sort of come out. It feels very like farm equipment, which is really lovely. And then this whole mix of sort of furniture. So hopefully the home feels like, in a country home as people gather things and they leave them in their country home. So it's a mix of furniture over time. So the house feels like it has a history because it had no history before. So the little bit of chinoiserie, the little bit of Victorian coming in there. And then this was the room above. This was the garage. This was a later renovation. So we had the garage here, and they wanted to make it into a den. So I had this big space, so we're getting a bit braver with colour here, and because it was like such a huge space, I painted in that sort of eucalyptus green, so the walls disappear. It becomes about the views beyond. Right along the side there where you see this banquette, it's sort of that 70s idea where I've built drawers all the way along, and it takes 3 single bed mattresses, full mattresses. So for overflow for people, or just to lie around and watch television. There's television and everything in here. You know, a couple of cow rugs. And then it's that whole mix of things. So everything here except this little train seat here, the client didn't have. I brought it all, but hopefully it just feels totally accidental, like it's all just thrown in. It doesn't really match, but it just feels like a room you just want to go in and you can be casual. Sometimes the space needs to say, it doesn't matter what you're doing here, I can put my feet up. And so the space needs to tell that story. Okay, this is another one where you're drawing from the inspiration of the landscape. This is the one that I was congratulated on, that I've just won Sydney Design Awards Best Residential on this project in Clovelly. So this is Clovelly in Sydney. This is the view that they look out on. This was another very contemporary building. Now, this is strange because the wife really loves, you know, Prada shoes and bags and fabulous, sophisticated. She dresses amazingly well. The husband likes to impress, but his idea would be barefoot cottage on the sand, you know. So it's sort of mixing those two sort of styles with this contemporary architecture. So I have this really clean contemporary architecture, but I don't want it to feel like every other sort of minimalist house. I want it to talk about where it is. So you can see how I've really picked up on the colours of the landscape. This table is a custom-made table out of old pier timbers, so you still have all the knots and everything. So it feels really rustic, but it is contemporary. And these beautiful sculptural velvet dining chairs, it sort of feels like the rock pool, but it feels very contemporary. But this is so much more about being a sculpture than set furniture, you know. And then using this hand-blown glass lights, it's sort of like perhaps jellyfish. You can look through them. So it's really, this is a total theme room for me. This is theme as I go, but you only need a few elements. I still want the architecture to feel simple and clean and open, but I also want it to sort of feel a bit about where it's living.
Did you choose the artwork, or did they have that in your view?
No, this is actually, we commissioned that. So the husband came to me and he said, I want to give my wife something for her birthday. So I found them an artist, and he painted the rocks down in Clovelly. So they commissioned that for that piece. Yeah, so really lovely. And then because, you know, when the art comes back, sometimes you have to consider the balance of the colours for the art. It was really much darker than I thought, and that's sort of where the depth of colour in the upholstery came to, so it balances that. So it's not the darkest thing in the room, but it's that whole play. And then this was lovely because we got to do all built-in furniture too, so it's all really functional, but simple and clean. From Geneco was the company I bought them from. So it's an Italian company they represent, but Geneco represents them here. Yeah, they do them in a cup. This is looking back the other way, so the cabinet continues all the way across. You know, still very clean and contemporary. This is our leather Minotti sofa, but it's that whole combination of pillows for that texture. Some of these ones from Fond Industry are made from vintage saris, I don't know, vintage something like that. So it really has that hand-woven texture. And then this beautiful vintage lamp. To me, you know, that pottery is such a trend at the moment, but it also feels like rock pools. It feels like nature. It softens those hard lines. A Parker table. So there's not a lot of pieces here. And of course, the husband needs a recliner. So that's a beautiful recliner, don't you think? So it spins and it reclines. And the best thing about it too is that it needs weight to recline. So the little kids get on it and they can't tip it back. So it's only an adult recliner only. Yeah, so really lovely. And here it's that play of fabric too, that I've got velvet and then there's the silk brocade on the other side. So it's using those opulent fabrics. So it's still feeling very special, but by mixing all those things, it's making it feel casual as well. So it needs to feel comfortable and warm, but also opulent. Okay, so this is a little cottage on the North Shore of Sydney again. This is what it looks like from the front. The client got me because after they'd already done the renovation. Now, at the back, there's a beautiful architectural renovation that This is before. So that opens up and comes out as this big triangle. The client had lived quite a while in New York. Her concept was New York loft. She loved New York, and that's why the exposed brick walls and the glass bricks and all that sort of stuff. But at the moment, this room is just awful. It just sort of feels like, I don't know, a lobby off the kitchen. It doesn't work. Even though this kitchen is the island is a fabulous rhombus shape, there's some really cool architectural things happen, but it's just not working. Your eye's just going everywhere. How am I going to work that space? So this is looking back the other way. We also have the asset of this amazing garden beyond. When they renovated this house, they were able to keep the original garden, so it's fully established, really lovely, but this bad faux silk, I think you can get those rugs for $50. That shiny sort of thing, and people think, oh, warm, but it doesn't really ground the space. The colours are fighting. It's terrible. Your eyes are just bouncing around. So what I had to work with, sometimes the client, she tells me New York loft, but sometimes you look at the client, and she was wearing, when I met her, this beautiful floral top. She's a real girly girl. Often she'd be in lace. She has 2 little girls that are totally pink. So it's all that. This is what she sort of loves. So I think, how am I going to make that work in the space? How do I marry that to New York loft, to exposed brick walls? So what I did is I came up with a whole combination of colours and textures drawing out of that brick. I don't know if you can see originally in that brickwork, there's so many colours. And because they've used recycled bricks, there's also a lot of taupe. The wall had taupe painted in there. Oh, sorry. It wasn't, I know, it's called taupe here. That's my American, but there was also a green in there too. So there was a lot of colours coming out in that I could draw on. So I'm picking up on some of the green there, but also that total mix of fabric, again, that accidental thing. So the brocades, this wool that looks like some sort of suit or jumper. Of course, you need a bit of pink zebra because that goes in every space. And just some real architectural things, some vintage pieces, some modern pieces, because I think that whole idea of New York loft is it's just a whole lot of cool pieces you're just all placing together. But it still needs to talk about pink, but it still needs to also house the husband. You don't want him to feel like he's living in Barbie's camper. So this is what I did from it. So it's really all about this beautiful vintage rug from Morocco through Kulchi. And that's what set the whole tone. And the wonderful thing about vintage rugs is you can sort of see they wear and they have patches and they have that natural discoloration, which totally picks up on a brick wall. It totally picks up on that. So the main sofa is just a very neutral color. So it looks like it's really pink, but there's a lot of serious things in here too. Like the table there is copper. And it's untreated copper, so it will age, it will verdigris. So it's picking up on the brick colors, it's picking up on all of that thing, marrying these 3 little square paintings. That was the only thing she sort of had, so it's sort of another clue. To counteract the pink, this very serious, contemporary Italian chair, which is beautiful. It fits you like a glove. It's that lovely leather. So playing on that. So there are a lot of elements coming in here, but it sort of looks like a collection, but it feels so much more like it belongs in that space and really invites you into that area. So this was in 50 Top Rooms a couple of years ago, I think. Yeah, a little bit of literal New York picture there in the background. And then looking the other way, this connected to that space. This was sort of the little girls' reading room. It was also their desks. They did all their crafts. They were prolific drawers. Every time I go, there'd be like 50 new. So, and picking up on that brick again. So all I did is I had this custom design rug there to ground that space. It's actually a rhombus shape, but it's divided in the greens and the pinks. So hand woven, so it makes sense of that space, and that sits right below the bookcase. So the girls can drag their books down and sit on there. And then this custom desk was made that extends that space all the way across with a noticer board. And it's designed so that as the girls get older, you just add one more drawer and it goes up to actual desk height. So, and you can probably change the butterflies if you want to. So, and then just doing this simple little pendant. So it looks like blocks from a child's, nursery, but it also extends that space, gives you that line from the ceiling, and playing on the sort of brick space, the brick colours there too, and the orange picking up on that brick as well. This was the little girl's room. So my clues here were, the colours coming out in that fireplace. There's blues and there's soft greens and everything in there. And, they have this little bit of artwork. So I wanted to make it look a bit girly. So all I did was paint the walls blush, basically. It's a really pale blush. So it's picking up on those lovely tones. And this is a vintage cabinet, which is sort of painted the color of foundation. So again, it's not a color that matches, but it sort of feels like it's in the family with a little custom handle. Because that table, there's a bed either side, because this table has to sit in that awkward position, having that nice little size of that table that's open doesn't feel like it's blocking the fireplace, so you can still look through it. And then just mixing up the bedding with a whole lot of different things and patchwork just makes it feel less perfect and more cozy for the little girls. So there's a lot of colours there happening so they can inject other things that are going to feel like they belong. Okay, this is coming down the main hall. Because the extension came out at a big triangle, it meant that there was this section which was really narrow, and I wanted to emphasise that beautiful brickwork again. That wall disappear. So all I did here is I painted it like that grey charcoal. So now you're just looking down. There was a beautiful vintage fixture in the hallway. So you saw the fixture and then it made you look towards this extension. There was a fabulous staircase going up here and the brickwork shot up. And this little table, which is from Hub's Furniture, it's like a console table, but because it's half, it makes that space feel like it has a full, sitting reception area without taking up a lot of space. I think it comes out about 250. So in a narrow space, it's just sort of perfect, but still feels very clean and very contemporary, but with the idea of a traditional hall table. Okay, this was a tricky one. Sometimes you get a house that has no redeeming architectural features at all. Yeah. This was one. I hope my clients aren't on Facebook, but I'm sure they knew it too. They bought this house because it was in a really fabulous area and it had the most amazing back garden. It was empty, but they had 4 little kids and they wanted to have a big playground area for them. So they brought me over to have a look at this and they said, can we do something with this? It's like, sure, we could do something with it. So I have to look at it and think, okay, what are the assets here? Besides the whole thing being brick, so you can park as many cars as you like, you can trailers, boats, whatever. And what are the problems I'm seeing? This entrance sort of looks like the dock of some sort of supermarket. It's bad. They've put it in this slate, which has a bit of mica in it, so it shines a bit silver. It's with the glass brick. So you look straight on this garage door. There's not a lot there. The house was so bad that the client, before we did the renovation, when the kids were being dropped home, she'd say, "Oh, just meet me at the corner." She'd get drop them down there. She didn't want them to drop them in front of the house because she was so embarrassed by it. So, and then the previous owners had built this house for their family, and so they got to custom it. So they did you can't really see here, but it's sort of a mauve mortar. So what an asset. Okay, so what can I draw from this? What do you really see? Now I'm seeing sort of a simple geometric line sort of hidden in all that mess. I think a lot of people would come in here and think, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to render it and paint it grey, which all developers would do. That's going to make a building that's fairly faceless and ugly even more faceless. So I've got the texture of the brickwork. The colour is horrible, but I want to play on that texture. That's a bit of detail. So you look at things that could be relevant to that space. So this is not the after. Yeah, we bought the streets. But you look at this beautiful house in the Hamptons and you're seeing that same simple line. You're seeing the flat front. You're seeing that, okay, I can pick up on that. I can't quite make it this, but I can sort of make it feel a bit more like that. So this is what we did. Yeah, so by lowering that front doorstep, and I'm adding the sandstone, which is really indicative to the area, and then mixing the sandstone 300 by 600s to the crazy paving, so it sort of gives you a little bit of a path leading in, meandering to it. All we did was paint the brickwork. So you see that beautiful texture? If you'd rendered that, there would be nothing there, no benefit. To even off all that bad architecture of the windows, we changed the glass brick window to a clear window, but we added that metal screen across so it sort of looks like it's evening it off, even though the windows are in that same place. So just trying to create some calmness visually and some symmetry. And now it's obvious where the front door is. It's not all about the garage there. A lot of plants to soften it. But now everyone's dropped there. All the kids are dropped home and she loves it. So just a bit of decorating there, you can do it. This was what I had inside. Isn't that fabulous? What I particularly like is this round sort of scoop area here, and I think it's always nice that there's a stunt as the kids walk in. They're likely to drop off the front doorstep. Makes it a bit exciting. So, and then the perfect placement and selection of lighting there. If you want to do surgery, it was so easy in there. You turn on those spotlights. You can really go for it. And then it had this long L-shaped room. So we have we go from a landing to a lobby to one L-shaped sofa it just was a stupid space. Now, I couldn't extend the space on this budget. We were spending it all on the backyard. So I had to make this work. So like you saw that I did on the front area where I've lowered the step down to 2 with sandstone. Oh, this is what I'm talking about in here. So because obviously the architecture doesn't give me any clues that I want to highlight. I sort of have to hide them. You have to look at where else you can get theme and inspiration and color. So the client had this collection of art. So this was one of the pieces they had, which is a beautiful piece. This, I look at that and it talks about how brave they are with color. To me it says I have young kids because, I like those sort of pops. And I'm marrying that into the space. So this was sort of my influence within that. So this is what I did. So we're at the front doorstep here. This is obviously that long, narrow area. Before that L-shaped sofa that we saw was right where those orange chairs are. This becomes a formal living area, but it's also the entrance. So what I did is I completely mirrored that side of the wall, so it helps extend that space. Ground with this beautiful sort of mid-centrally feeling rug. All the television components, everything are in other cupboards hidden away. So you just have the sheerness of that television, so it keeps the space as wide as possible. Every trick we can do. And then it's a narrow table, but it's like a placement of furniture, the scale of the furniture. So you can sit a lot of people there. It feels like a very cozy space, but it's still in this very open space. And if you look beyond here, this space also has to work for the dining room. And they want to dine a lot of people. They have a lot of friends. So by painting all the walls in this dark taupe grey, so it's sort of like a colour that picks up a lot of colours that you put in there. It's a great dark base when you want to do pops of colour. Oh, that's just that fabulous vintage chair and mohair. This is how we ground the dining room. So I don't like to use a lot of glass tables, but in this case, you could have a really big table that was really visually quiet. So we can sit a lot of people here without taking up a lot of space. It's ground by this beautiful vintage Sculptural light that we got from LA, so it sort of becomes a little bit of sculpture because you're going to be looking at those pieces right through the room. Even when it's not lit, it sort of just becomes art. And then a combination of vintage chairs. These chairs are in a Missoni fabric, and then these are 1960s vintage. So it becomes a really generous, comfortable dining space, but really visually very quiet. And what grounds that room is that fabulous Christopher Farr fabric, that yellow and white. So it's bringing that really strong colour. And the reason why I can do so many strong colours is because I have those dark, neutral walls. This off the side, so the dining room was here. This was this beautiful little area here that they used as a dining room. So not a lot of space was there. And amazingly, they'd lived there for like 25 years. So this is what they'd ended up with. So it's not like they'd just moved in. So I needed a playroom for the kids and another little sitting room. So what I did is I changed the window out to clear. I built in this cabinet all the way along there, so it makes the most of that space. It gives you that storage and also brings the scale down for the children by not having any upper cabinets. And then we're ground with this beautiful armadillo rug. Now, this sofa here from Jardin, when I upholstered it, I said to the client, which is the last time I ever said it, it's indestructible. You have kids, it's like a wetsuit fabric. So yogurt, chocolate, whatever, it will all wipe off. I didn't know about biro. So the kids had biro, they scribbled all over this thing. So yeah, there was one day the little boy, I came down, the little boy, we looked on the, one of the little boys was really quiet. And we went in there and we looked on the sofa and there was all this sort of orange coloured stuff all over it. We're going, what is that? It sort of looks like makeup. And we said, have you done anything? We looked at him and he goes, no. And he had like blush and stuff all over his face and lipstick. No, he goes. So yeah, that wiped off, but not the biro. So it's not indestructible, it's just wipeable. Yeah, but it creates a nice little fun area of colour, but ground within that space too. Then when you look through, so dining room, playroom, and then looking through into this back area. When I had this is one architectural thing I changed. At the back of this room, it was sort of a sunroom. They had like a clear plexiglass roof there. So what happened whenever the sun came there, and because of the position of the house, the sun was always there. It was awful to be in there. It was just like, being in a hothouse. So it was a room they never used, and in a space with this little floor space, you needed to make an asset of everything. So what we did is we extended the roof out, and we put a real roof in there, so it was sort of insulated, so it became a room that we could use. This room leans into the bathroom too, and then we added a deck and some French doors to extend that space. So this is what we did here. So what I did is I built cabinets all the way around where the bathroom was, so it makes this room like a little library. I always like to give a room a purpose. This was another walk-through room, but by having that big, we did a custom day bed, so the kids can grab their books and sit down on the rug or sit on the day bed and read their books, or the parents could read to them. It doesn't block the view to the beautiful backyard. It's now open to the deck, and because you can open that up, it also extends the living area, extends the dining area, keeping it on that level. It makes the bathroom sort of disappear, and this is this is my version of a total theme room. So I was sort of going jungle, so giraffe. This is like an African seat. This is what the kids call the goat. And then this was like a faux ostrich sort of vinyl. It's very subtle. Cowhide. And then on this, because in the architecture we couldn't change some of the windows, so the heights were uneven. So the way I made it feel like it was more simple is I added this valance. And that's really picking up on that line of the Moroccan tents and that whole Moroccan idea. So I remember originally showing the client the design for this, and they go, "That's crazy, it's going to look like a circus." But you hardly notice it now, but it sort of goes along with that. It's very simple, and it makes the windows look a lot more even. So sometimes it can just be a play of texture. This was the bedroom. Yeah, and this is where I said, how can I really fix this? It's lovely. Yeah. You want to save these lights. This is where people think, okay, if I do a feature wall, yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is where sort of feature walls don't really work. I don't know where that colour came from. I don't know. Hospital. So what you want to do, it's not great architecture, in there, so you want to simplify it. You don't want to focus on this big green wall and this bed. It's really amazing that anyone would sleep in there. So what I did is I looked at another painting they had, and this was my influence for that room. So it's those beautiful muted colours, those soft tones, that sort of feminine line. So how am I going to pick up on that? So this is what I did. All the walls in that room are grass cloths. So it's that beautiful texture and that warmth of that grass cloth. So you're already cocooned in that space. I added the floor-to-ceiling drapes, but having that hard, simple curved valance really softens the line of those square windows, and again helps cocoon you. When that's closed, it's just such an amazing space to stay in. Now, this was a custom king-size bed that was sort of based on the lines of a sofa, really tactile, soft velvet, and then a whole play. This is like a silk velvet pillow on the bed, and that whole play of colours and textures. Having that big opulent sofa, which has the traditional sort of pattern of what a period sofa would be, which sort of mixes up the periods a bit, but it still is in those soft tones. It's that lovely play. This is in a houndstooth, a sort of black and beige, so it sort of feels a bit masculine too. So a whole play of texture and colour within those tones. These lights on the side table are something that I found in Palm Springs that I carried back in my hand luggage. So it's beautiful. It has that really hammered sort of a feel, and it gives the room a bit of history, a bit of story, a bit of texture. But again, it's all that. This is a very monochromatic room to me, but there are so many colours in here. And the line of that vintage cabinet, again, that sort of collection of pieces. This was a little girl's room. Again, sort of hospital, sort of, I don't know, university campus sort of a look. So this is what we did to it later. So again, that's another reason where, again, that colour was just off-white. Yeah, so once you paint it on a whole wall, though, it feels very pink, feels really lovely, and it's what you accent with it. Now, this little custom sofa from Jardin in this beautiful pink cotton blend, the little girl chose it and she saw the fabric, and you know, sofas can take forever, so she was just dreaming of this sofa coming, waiting and waiting, waiting. So excited. The day it arrived, the parents sent me a photograph. She slept on it. She wouldn't get off it, so she spent the night on a little sofa, curled up at that. So it was really cute. You know, that's when you've got your client right, that they love it that much. And just a little bit of a princess light coming in there, so just making the kid feel like it's their space. Okay, this is talking about sort of some of the clues from colour. This is when I did the Mirabelle event. This is like, often people think you have a small space, so don't use a strong colour because it just makes it feel even smaller. But if you want to put a lot of stuff in a small space, the best thing to do is use a strong colour, or if you want to emphasise those pieces within that space, because the walls disappear. But this was each of the designers had a 3x3 vignette. I don't know if any of you went to the Mirabelle event, but this was mine, and it was in this sort of dark taupey colour. So because you have a cool colour and I want to make it really inviting, I want to put warm colours within it. So this is what I did. So again, it's about that beautiful vintage rug, and then it's about that layering of all those golds and those warm colours and that texture. So I wanted to create a space that people didn't say, oh yeah, that looks really nice. I wanted to create a space where everyone wanted to go and sit in it. You know, like a little room where you wanted to go in there. And you'd see how much stuff I get in there. And it sort of still feels like cozy and calm and not too chaotic. There's so much pattern. And this was really about, you know, you had to ask people to donate things. So it wasn't like I had the art and I matched anything to it. The art came after. But because I had so much colour and pattern and texture in there, and those dark walls, it could take all that colour. And see on the walls too, this is sort of a little trick to emphasize that height. But because the room was small, if that curtain was red all the way, it sort of might feel too dominant. By having that strié of color, so where it's just grounded to the ground, it sort of helps the room feel a bit bigger there too. And looking back the other way. So really lovely golds and hot pinks and everything, but that main color is just a simple scheme. And it's funny, somebody ended up, because everything was for sale there, somebody ended up, they bought the sofa, they go, well, I need to buy the chair because it's a set. It's like, who would think that was a set? But when you put it like that, they feel like it's that room set. So that's great. It's making unmatched parts feel like. So if your client has a big collection, that's the best way to do it, dark colours. Okay, this one was actually, you know, this is where you're given really simple contemporary architecture. This was actually an old apartment of mine. So it's lovely, clean, open space in inner city Sydney, but it's sort of, it doesn't really say anything. It doesn't make the most of the space. I have a huge collection of crazy art and colour, you know, because I really feel your space needs to talk about you. So you go into my space, you can see that. So what I did is, this is the entrance. So off here where the camera is standing, this was the entrance. Now often we're given really small spaces where you don't have room to put tables and all that sort of stuff, but how am I going to make it feel like a little entrance? It was literally, it's 1 metre wide there, and then it's sort of about 2 metres deep, but it connected to that main space. So I upholstered the walls in that blue wool, green, I'm colourblind. So, yeah, in that green wool. And so you're giving wonderful texture and depth and also making it a little soundproof, but making that space a feature even though it's not really a space. And then a mirror extending the space, a little bit of vintage, you know, that I love, and a simple side table. So it really creates an entrance where there wasn't really an entrance, it was just sort of a nook. Then when you go into the living room, this is how I injected colour. Again, that's a really dark base colour. It's one of those tones where it has a really good mix of colours within the base so that as the light changes, it picks up on different colours, like it will look grey or it will look green or it will look blue. And that's a great trick to use. You don't want to use a colour that just has 2 or 3 colours mixing in it because it's going to look very static. So in this way, everything I put in there feels like it's, you know, belonging to that, and I can inject so much colour. So this was a Kurt Brummel, a custom fabric that I had printed for that sofa, which was really cool. A little bit of influence of Miami days coming through there. This was, the kitchen, like a lot of modern apartments, was connected to the dining space. So you really just sort of have a corridor of the dining space and then looked onto the deck. That was a lovely thing that it all looked onto the deck, but you don't really have defined spaces. So what I did here, again, painting out all the living space walls in that same dark colour. And this is where I really ground the space with that amazing rug from Cadry's. So it's that really strong colour. And so it really feels like a lovely little dining space, but it's just off the kitchen. So it's creating that as a little room, but all I've done is put down a rug. So it's really lovely. It's not visually, you're not blocked by anything there, but we had many a fabulous dinner party in that space. So this is the bedroom, which was 3 by 3, which unfortunately I don't know what it's like in Melbourne, but a lot of Sydney inner city spaces, that's the size they give you for the bedroom. So again, what would people do in a small space? Light, low furniture. That's why I did dark and high furniture. Yeah, so it's like the whole thing was cocoon in that beautiful teal colour. This is a vintage bed. It's a 4-poster, so it sort of feels grand. But because it's so open, it's allowed to be in that space, but it gives sort of a dimension. And also being in that chrome, it catches the light, so it sort of doesn't feel like it's really blocking your view there. Like you probably wouldn't have wanted to do that in like a dark black timber or something like that. It may be too dominant. And then the windows weren't the whole way. They were about 1 metre high, but by completely draping that whole wall, floor to ceiling, once it's closed, it just feels like this fabulous cocoon boutique hotel room that, what do you do in a bedroom? You sleep. So it's just really conducive to that. It's lovely. A little jewel of a space to be in. And then the hallway that connected there, again, I wanted to display my art. Having these walls light, it's sort of fighting everything else that's happening there and not focusing your view to the outside. So by painting it the dark, I can put a lot of art on there. I can sort of, it's all about the theatre trick of guiding where you want the eye to look. So it's just as important as colour and elements is negative space. So that's how I'm dividing the room. So this flow of art leads me from the living room into the hall, but then it breaks so that this other collection of art grounds the dining room space. And then art is always hung to complement those spaces. Like in the dining room, it's much lower. It should always connect to the furniture. It depends from what view you're looking at it. My pet peeve is art that's too high. And then on the outside, because I didn't have a garden, because I'm in the inner city, this is my garden. So completely green. Yeah, so it's lovely. You sort of look out on that space and that contrast to the outside. So it sort of makes it fun. The trees beyond, a goose. Yeah. Interiors should have a sense of humour. They shouldn't be too serious. There should be surprises. So this apartment was actually in vogue, which was very exciting. Okay, need some water. Okay, this is actually my space now. This is where it's showing, this is we found another property. It's very hard in Sydney. The prices are crazy and you want a big space. So I ended up buying something which I probably won't do again. It was like working with a developer, which is very hard. There's some good developers. Mine wasn't so great. So my influence here is this is what was originally where the property is now. So it was a factory. It's a factory area. So I'm thinking about the history of what was here. So that bit of industrial, I want to bring some industrial. It's in a city. So that was knocked down and there were 8 terrace houses built. So I have one of the terrace houses. This is the beautiful interiors that you get. Luckily, because I came in early enough, we customed everything, we cancelled everything they were doing, so I'm just working within that space. It's a really great amount of space, but you're sort of limited by some of the spaces they give you. So this is the kitchen here. So linking to my industrial, trying to be a bit contemporary, but industrial, this is what I did. So it's really, this is a lot of the finishes here are from a company called Axolotl. I don't know if you guys know it. They do a lot of commercial finishes, but they do these amazing textured finishes. So all these back cabinets here, they're actually 30% concrete. It's a plastered and painted finish. So it looks like concrete, it feels like concrete, and the way it's blocked like that, it really feels sort of industrial. Because the bottom floors are all poured concrete floors, it links to what's going on downstairs. This island section here is another finish by Axolotl, and it's 30% brass powder. So again, they spray on, they trowel it, so it's beautiful. It tarnishes, so it's a really organic, aged elements, but done in a very clean, contemporary way. And then the star, or that horrible word, the hero, is that amazing Brazilian granite. So it's beautiful. I wanted the idea, because it was factory, sort of along the lines of concrete, but I love the organic nature of a stone. And doing the 70 mil thick top, to me, felt very industrial. So it's sort of like, to me, I'm like it's Tiffany meets industrial. Or something like that. And by using the same materials, a few materials and the full splashback in the same material. There's not a lot of visual noise, but you're still seeing the organic nature of that. The walls are in this warm grey. These pennants here are by this company called Savage Design, and they come from an engineering background. I think their father made tools. So what it is, it's like, you know when you hold a hammer, that textured, hand-hammered, ribbed finish that you could grip on? That's what the lights are made out of. So they have that real industrial sort of idea. That's beautiful, solid brass pieces, so going along with that. As often happens in a job, you have something where it's something you may not want there, which is there were pipes coming up through the wall there. So rather than sort of pretend it's not there, I built in that winged wall that's the same width of the island, so it feels like it belongs to that, and had those custom metal shelves made, so it looks like that's there so that the shelves can clip onto it. So if something's there in the way, make it an asset, you know, so it really feels like it belongs and divides that space. And when you look the other way, it's just beautiful. It's just very streamlined. It's all about symmetry. You know, this is the fridge here on the side where I'm standing, and on the other side is the pantry, so it's mirrored. Those handles are this beautiful solid brass aged thing, so it's the feel of the pieces too. It's like, you know, you have to think of the hand of things too. So, but again, playing with those finishes. But it's really, this is 1200 wide, which is beautifully generous for a couple of people to be in it. It's lovely, but because it's connected to the living room, it also needs to feel really open. By having this fabulous little wing wall, you know, your mess is sort of hidden, your sink's hidden, but it's still very open. And then this looks on, and including art in a space, you should do that. I mean, I like having art in kitchens and bathrooms and something like that. It shouldn't feel like it's something else. It should be a consistency through the house. And then this looks onto, oh, no, this is the bathroom. See, that's good, isn't it? Often you're given, this bathroom is, I think it's like 1300 wide. So how am I going to make something, well, that can hold enough storage that you need in a bathroom and also feels like something special? All the other terraces in this development have 600 by 300 white tiles on the walls, like everything does, and, you know, a faux floor. So they're just faceless, sort of generic. So what I did is picking up on the idea of sort of an industrial. These are porcelain tiles, so they're really practical. But the wonderful size of this, you think in a small space you need small tiles, but these are a 600 by 600, which means that with a bit of jockeying, we made it so it's like even amount of tiles at the back. So it's cleaning up the lines, it's very simple, it's sort of giving you a nice clean geometry. The floor is porcelain again, but it looks like a grey limestone, so it's bringing in those elements. Custom cabinets made. Because the space that you have between the door and the wall wasn't really big enough for a big cabinet, you have to do all those tricks. So like the taps on the wall, which extends the space, so you don't need to do them on the counter. The curving of that cabinet, which to me sort of felt quite retro in the 70s, and then colouring it a colour that you think maybe would not go, so it feels like a piece of furniture. This sink is a metal sink, so it really feels like factory, quite industrial, lovely. Again, all the tap finishes and the door handles have that softness for that small space, that curve, and in that aged brass, and all that beautiful hand of the solid brass. And then this big cabinet is mirrored at the side too, so you have that storage, but it sort of disappears into the wall. So it's sort of playing with those tricks, playing with those colours. And I get to use that beautiful Calacatta viola, which a marble I love. You know, it brings that texture, sort of brings age into it. And in that 70 mil thick, which is beautiful, really feels substantial in that space. And then that wonderful little pendant light, picking up on the curve again, but it sort of makes it sort of off-center in that space. Okay, this was the living room beyond the kitchen, small to a deck. So this is what I did. So again, it's about texture and colour. It is the connection to the kitchen, so it needs to pick up on those greys and bronzes and the strength of colour from the kitchen. It's a play of vintage pieces, the chrome and the marble. It's all about texture. This sofa is Kelly Wearstler fabric, to me a very neutral camouflage, so playing with that texture. And then you can see here the art is all hung to connect to that living space. So when you're sitting in there, it just becomes part of that whole space. And also focuses the eye where you want it to. So it focuses down onto that space and where you're sitting. And on this side here is this amazing chair and this and ottoman in the grey velvet that picks up on the grey from the stone. from South Pacific with little red dragons. It was beautiful. Anyway, that's looking out, and then the curtains are sheer all the way across, and they're like a linen that is shot with a gold brass, so it really, at night, it picks up on that warmth from the brass of the cabinets too, but it just feels really neutral. It's that play of contemporary and old pieces, and this fabulous vintage pendant from Miami, which to me looks like, you know, when you wove bread together to make baskets. So, you know, and this incredible fabric from South Pacific, it sort of looks like hand-painted sort of watercolor. So beautiful, bringing in lots of color and texture. Okay, this was the dining room. Okay, when you're doing your own space, a lot of designers have problems deciding what to do. I don't. I just think I can use all these things that clients are too scared to use, and I can put in all this stuff that I love. So there was always this wallpaper from Colfax and Fowler that I love that clients were too scared to use, so I used it. So this is one of the few times I've done a feature wall, but if you did the whole room in this, it would sort of make your head explode a little bit. So, and because this leads up to the deck on the top landing, it comes right up that wall, so it's sort of a little story. And to me, this wonderful paper has a history and that idea of when you were a kid, the storybooks and Lion, Witch in the Water, whatever. So it really has a lovely, playful aspect. And I wanted to show that if you used this much color, I think there's 12 colors in that paper, that it didn't mean that the room had to be like a playground. It could be very serious. So you had to counteract that with more serious pieces. That's why the vintage chairs, that's why I grounded it with that beautiful dark blue. But the vintage chairs are in like a wool men's suit fabric. So it's that really calm, sort of sensible. And that table I had custom made, again, by that Savage design. And it was a design of mine that each side was 1,200 wide, so that 2 chairs could fit at each space. But because it wasn't a really big space, I wanted it to feel really open. So it's actually a 10 mil steel top with a real wood veneer on it. So it just floats there, but you feel it and it feels like a real wood table, because it is real wood. It's as much real wood as most tables are nowadays. So it has that beautiful texture of wood, but it just floats there and sort of has that hardness and that industrial nature of the steel, which totally contradicts the wallpaper, which is sort of a lovely juxtaposition. And then it's on these 2, again, steel barrels that are brass. Now the whole idea of this table, I had this concept that table's in 2 pieces. So if I wanted to have a big party or something, that I could take the top off and take the barrel base and put it down in the garage base, put one piece against the wall. But when the 3 burly guys carried one steel top up the stairs and nearly died, I thought, well, in theory that works, but it probably is not going to happen very often. Yeah, and then I found this incredible pair of vintage lights at an antique store. This is from an Italian company, they're 70s. It's that hand-blown Murano glass with that texture. It's bringing in the bronze and the chrome, that lovely sort of mix, and picking up on the warm colors. All that bronze picks up on the beautiful black butt floors. But they become art. You know, in this junk shop, it sort of just looked like chaos, and people were like, I'd seen them there for like 8 months, and no one had bought them, and it's sort of they looked out of place. And when I bought them, the people at the counter go, oh, I never saw those, they're amazing, what are they? It's sort of like you take it and you put it out somewhere else, and then people want to have it. But I think it's so beautiful there. It's such a little feature, and they glow. There's this curved, it's hand-blown Murano glass that is textured on the back, and then with that gold on the front, so it's really beautiful sculpture. This is in that same room, but this is sometimes you're given very little architecture. Like the fact that the ceiling had to drop over the stairs is not so glamorous. It's not so great. So you take something like that. In fact, the developer had originally done where it stepped back and then it was an angle as it covered the top of the stairs, and it was all this mess. So I got him to even it off so it was one level, which made that ceiling a lot lower, but visually it made that cleaner. But I want to play on this. So this is where I use color to create architecture. So what I did is I painted it in the trim color, so it looks like the ceiling comes down, goes over, and divides those 2 spaces with that different color. So it just looks like light, but it makes that look like it's part of the architecture, it's on purpose, it's part of the dimension. So sometimes you can block things out with color to create where you want the eye to look. So, and this was really, I think I haven't done this a lot before, but that idea of one color meeting another color on a corner, it just became very blocky, which is, I think is a big trend, that sort of block color, but it sort of created that space. Yeah, see my art, see how low it is? So when you're sitting at that table, it's just all around you. You're enveloped in all these beautiful pieces. It's not about walking through and standing back and looking at that art. So just that lovely collection. This was the entrance hall. So often happens in a new space, you give them this tiny little entrance hall again. How am I going to make it some sort of feature? So this is what I did. So the walls are in a color called Bengal blue. Again, taking the curtains all the way to the ceiling really emphasizes that, 3 meter, it's over 3 meter ceiling. But it's in a sheer in the blue, so it's picking up on the tone of the wall. And then this fabulous little gold demi-lume, which I actually salvaged out of a house I was doing in Vaucluse. It didn't work in that house, but I thought, okay, it can work for me. And it's got this fabulous salmon marble top, so bringing through the warmth of the colors from upstairs, the wood colors, you bring that warmth down here. And again, you can display that art. The mirror that I had on that green wall before, it sort of extends that space, and a great little lucite vintage light. So it's still talking about that collection of pieces, even though it's just a little space. But that's where the art stops. Now there's a big blank wall, because you just want to ground that little area and then keep the rest of it open as you go through, so getting the art to focus where you want it to. Oh, this is another property that a client got. Again, it's one of those places where this was a holiday house. This is amazing what, 1.3 million can buy in Sydney. Isn't it beautiful? And this was on Manly Beach, and it's sort of like somewhere with very little architecture, very strange spaces. This was part of a living room that was sort of a triangle. The family was coming here on holidays. They have 5 children. They also had a nanny, and they've all got to be in this space, so it's like, how do you make that work? So this is where I really had to use every color trick I could to create this architecture, create zones, give dimension to the space, focus you to the windows outside. So this was my inspiration for the color. Because it was a space that the clients had nothing, I was providing everything. I look what's around me. This is Manly Beach. Look at these beautiful, great colors. I'm thinking holiday, I'm thinking Miami, I'm thinking, anything to do with beach. So this is what I did. So first of all, the trick was that when you come from the entrance hall, I've done these big, beautiful stripes that lead you all the way from that dark, narrow hall down into the rest of the space. All the other walls, because they're all such a strange shape, it's that dark green, sort of I think it's called sea legs. And so it makes the walls sort of disappear a bit. Because I had to dine all those people in that strange triangle space next to the kitchen, I did a built-in banquet that you fit like 20 kids along. And then the back of it, even though it's a player fabric, and the upholstery is in a vinyl and the back's in a cotton. So the upholstery, the seat you can wipe down, but it's in the same color as the wall, so it disappears into the wall. So creating a lot of space without taking up a lot of visual noise. This oval table on a pedestal base, again, it doesn't take up any space, visual noise, and then the 4 vintage chairs. So if you had a table there that you had to put the 10 chairs or 8 chairs, whatever, all those legs, you're going to see all those legs. So by doing a banquet, it's less chairs, and contrasting it, the warmth of the wood to the blue, it sort of makes them a little feature and warms up that cool color. And then it's a play of vintage pieces as well. As we go through, this is the entrance hall as you come in, so it's a very dark, long corridor. So by doing these beautiful stripes, we've ground that area and made that little entrance. This little table by Blue Dot, it's cool because it's fighting the traditional nature of that beach house because it's contemporary and made of metal, but it's very simple, very quiet, not very deep. A little bit of vintage here. This is actually a photograph I took at the Standard in Miami, so using art when you don't have a big budget where you can find it. And also, as you can see in that stripe, the top stripe is the light color. So what that does, if I'd done the top stripe as a dark color, you're going to notice the ceiling. This, because the light color is close to the ceiling color, it blurs those lines and sort of helps extend that and keep the scale of the space a bit higher than it actually is. Then as it comes down and sits with this beautiful vintage chair and this fabulous chenille fabric from Schumacher. So the idea of chenille is cozy, but it sort of picks up on the lines of the bamboo. That light is really cool because, again, you can see through it. It's creating space. And ground again by like Grandpa's slippers rug. So it's that idea of beach house and texture. And the rug was actually, see, the table is an oval shape. The rug was an oval shape too in that awkward space to help ground that space. So look how much dining you can get there, and it takes up no room. I think from this chair out to that chair, it's about 1.8 meters. So very little space there, but lots of dining. And then again, when you cut through, the sofa is sort of like at a strange angled piece that wraps around that oval-shaped rug, so it creates like a lot of sitting in that small space. And then this wall that leads to the bedrooms at the back, again, it's in that, again, the idea of looking through into another room, that sort of theatre trick of, walls beyond, that gives you that dimension that there's another room. If this was just in the dark colour, it's just going to disappear, and then guide you down to the bedrooms. The kitchen, which was already in, we couldn't change, is in that really light sort of sandy colour. So all the cabinetry was done in that raw plywood, so it feels like it belongs to that. It's just that simple thin top, so again we're picking up on that line there. So rather than make the kitchen look like it's just a cheap kitchen, which it was, it just feels like it's part of the whole architectural story. It's just simple. This is one of the kids' bedrooms. Because it was at the back, it had no view. It's that really deep blue colour, which is great for kids and fun. There was a bunk bed on this side. There was a single bed on that side. There was a trundle bed, so lots of kids slept in there. Yeah, so just a little bit. This was actually art when I didn't have a lot of budget. It was a tea towel from a souvenir shop that I just put in a frame. So it brings through a pop of colour. And then this was the bedroom. It's that real idea of mid-century holiday beach house, even though it's in an apartment. So this fabulous painting I found at a salvage store, I don't know, $20, $30, whatever, but it's that real idea of that old beach shack you go to with that really dreadful painting, but it's lovely. It sort of makes it all part of that period. And this is all about playing on texture. These are Jonathan Adler. This is a David Hicks fabric, so it's texture on colour. And the walls in that room are sort of a dark sand, like a wet sand colour. This is, how am I going for time? Am I going too fast? Yeah, we're going to have time for questions. This is just showing you a project that I'm working on at the moment. So I don't have finished pictures of this, but I have a little progress. As your business gets bigger, your clients get bigger, the houses get bigger, and rather that this was the client who had the house with the bad mauve brick. So this is the third property I've done for them, and they've got this gorgeous home now, which is like sandstone. This is one of those houses with so much history. It was an original cottage, which was extended, and then which is extended again. But it's really 80s inside. And then this is the living room that looks out there. This was dressed to sell. Isn't that great? Doesn't it really highlight the period of the room? So again, this is where you have to stand there and see, where is my eye looking? Your eye's looking all over. It's crazy. It's a mess. And what are you seeing there? You're not seeing the view. Unfortunately, this fireplace is not the original. They thought they were going to be glamorous and replace it with a brand new white marble fireplaces. So it's one of the only rooms where it doesn't have a traditional fireplace. But there's no real... So I have to make that an asset without really replacing it. Look at this beautiful wood that they've kept there. It's that lovely deep colour. But it really fights that yellow. It's horrible. It's sort of like red and yellow. It's just awful, not a space you want to be in at all. So this is where dark colours are magic. So this beautiful colour, and then you're enveloped in it. It's becoming about the view. Look how fantastic that fireplace looks now. It now is highlight. And by taking out the traditional line and putting in that contemporary one, it gives you a little bit of sculpture. It picks up on that fireplace. It just takes a little element of contemporary to say contemporary in a traditional space. So it feels a lot more. This room is in progress. Like a lot of these pieces aren't staying here. This is being reupholstered. I've got two of those which they're using. The chair. So they're beautiful mid-century Kafka chairs, just gorgeous. So they're going to be, I think I have a picture later of the leather. It's going to be like a sort of blood leather and upholstery on there. See, I've added these curtains already. It's just a very simple linen drape. So you're just dressing those windows. You don't need to have any sun protection, but you want to just give that idea of tradition and glamour without really saying too much. There's going to be an amazing curved sofa. Oh, I think I show. Yeah, these are my colours that I'm using in there and textures. You want it. It's a grand house. You want it to be opulent. So there's some really. This is part of the rug. Really, there's mohairs. There's silk. This is this wonderful fabric that almost looks like, I know I mentioned this yesterday, the glow mesh handbags, which a lot of you wouldn't really understand, but it's that wonderful sort of woven metal, so it sort of feels like it's really bejeweled. There's silvers and gold. This silk here, like silk either side and this beautiful silk in the middle. So it's really about texture and opulence. This is the fabric. That is the color of the leather that's going to go on those vintage chairs, that tiny little square at the top of the blue. And then that blue is what the cushions are going to be. So we should have those back this week. I'm very excited. This is the design for the rug. So it's sort of like, it really needs, to me, it needs to be totally unmatched parts that all come together that sort of look like a collection. So I'm looking at, I want a contemporary sort of shape. Because of the way I'm doing the furniture, it's sort of grounding that living space. So this is, it really looks like a test pattern, doesn't it? But it's sort of based on an old design I saw of a vintage kilim. But I'm doing it in these sort of tones here. So you can see a bit of the, it's sort of warming up these tones, but when they're in the space, they're a lot lighter. But it's really going to ground that, look very graphic and contemporary with the light, because the furniture's going to have so much depth of colour. These are the chairs half done. So this is the leather upholstery. Originally, they were done in a vinyl with studs, because at that time, vinyl was the latest material. It was the height of fashion. So, but now it's going to have the opulence of the leather with the upholstery on the top. So many people have offered to buy these at the upholstery, but they're not for sale. That beautiful curve, it's lovely. And then this is opposite that space. So you have to watch my Facebook and Instagram, and you can sort of see that, how that room develop. You'll see that room change. This is on the other side. I'm given this massive space that is not on the view. It's a dining room, but it's sort of like a lot of people don't use separate dining rooms. Luckily, this client loves to cook. So it's some space I can use. You don't want another living space. There's already 3 other sitting rooms. So, you know, I want to ground this space and make it, because it doesn't have the view, cozier. So what I did, this is just my photograph. The walls are like an army green, this lovely grey taupe. It sort of sits this beautiful original fireplace there. I found this old vintage conference table at a secondhand store. So it's bringing in a bit of mixing the periods. These are custom-made little mini wingbacks. And that table actually extends one more space too, so you can have an intimate party for like 25. And then these beautiful lights picking up on the brass, the hardware of the space, but in a very contemporary way. And so these just float on the strings above the table and ground that, but it's really oversized, contemporary, at large. And these 2 cabinets in the blush, picking up on the colour from the marble, are from Grazia. I don't know if you know Grazia, she's gorgeous. Yeah, and so it's just creating a little bit of a dining nook. This is showing in the other space, you know, just where I've used this neutral colour throughout. It's a very dark colours in that space, because I want it to be about the view, be about the woodwork. Look how beautifully that colour tones with that wood. It's really lovely. It's making that the beautiful feature. Now this is the entrance that the clients use. So what I did is I custom designed this cabinetry, because, you know, parents, mothers, want the kids to be able to dump something somewhere. So here there's like 4 drawers as you go across. There's one for smelly shoes, there's one for ballet shoes, you know, there's one for outdoor shoes, and then they all have their own hook there for, you know, their bags. So you've got to create something that where things can go away, but because it's painted the same colour as the walls, it sort of sits quieter. And then we've got the leather seat there, so it's picking up on that natural tone. And then this is upstairs in the master bedroom. It's like gorgeous, that chair. This is the most expensive chair in their house, and they're going, why are we paying that money for it? But it's so beautiful now. It's finally arrived. It's from Ling Rosé. The client goes up, like, even though she doesn't have much time, she goes up to her adult's wing there and just sits back on it and reads. Even if she just has 5 minutes, she goes, I just love it. It's like being wrapped in a doona. It's just beautiful. And she sits there with one leg draped over that. It's just that lovely chair to do that. And it's like the opulence of that fabric and the softness of the fold invites you there, but that metal frame just keeps it very contemporary and doesn't make it feel too traditional. You can see the beautiful wall colour, how it works with the fireplace, and then that curtain is sort of like a gold, so it really makes that a special space. And then this is one quick last thing which you'll see develop. This is another project for a family. They bought another holiday home in a beach suburb north of Sydney. So this is the architecture I'm given. So it's really lovely. Again, it's a young family. This is where, you know, when you work with clients for a while, it's really fun, because they came to us and they said, we have a short time period, we don't have a big budget. And it's like, we're already booked up for the year, but because they're a previous client, we say, okay, we'll take you on, but this is the budget you need to spend, which was sort of about double what they said, but still low, and you have no say. You just have to let us do it if you want it done for December. So because they've worked with me twice before, that's great. So it has to be very much about that client, but I know those clients, so I can do that. They have 5 children. They had 3, wanted 1 more and had twins. So they have 5 children. The eldest is 7. So yeah, so they've got this beach house. They've given me, this house is pretty new, but it's really simple and clean and nothing. So I'm thinking, where are my colours coming from? It doesn't look on the beach, it looks out on the bush. So here's my colour scheme, and I'm drawing it from that. It's really going to be sort of 70s, not so mid-century, it's going to be 70s and chrome and bright colours. The bottom colour there, that sort of fluorescent green is the boys' bedroom, you know. It's going to be really cool, fun things, a lot of vintage pieces, so, you know, watch that one grow, that will be good. Yeah, and that's just showing you, I don't know if you can see those colours coming out of there, but it's sort of like, you know, it's giving me relevance. And so because the whole house looks out on that, those colours are going to be married to the inside as well and mixing up like that. So that's the end of my presentation today. Yep.
Thank you, that was amazing.
You're very welcome.
The one thing I would love to say is the introduction of colour, just extraordinary, and how Brett mixes so many different colours, and they don't need to, like you said, they're in the same family, but sometimes I believe they're not in the same family. And I think that's so fabulous, and I think that I can see your distinct style because of the colour.
Right.
And yeah, that's what shone out for me today.
And I think that's very true. It really, I think it's very important that the colours should clash.
Yes.
Yeah, because it gives energy. It looks more accidental. It's just sort of, it's like a balance of colour rather than a matching of colour. Hopefully you look at those rooms. It's like the first space where it had that rug with that sort of swirl of red in it, which was that strange collection of pieces. Like I remember the client saying to me, like, theyese are all the pieces I showed them, and they're going, really? You know, and then when it was done, she loves that room, but she goes, how would anybody really copy you? Because what are you going to do? It's just like, it looks like this strange collection that goes together. So I think that's great. It really needs to feel accidental and like it doesn't really work, and that gives it the energy.
And I think that's what we always talk about is you can see now Brett's work and you'll say, that's Brett's work. I can see that. And that's what we need to create as designers, so that people look at your style and your look and they'll say, oh, I know whose that is. I think that's important, and that's how you get the edge, and that's how Brett's become obviously so successful. And I know that he's very talented, but people can see that, and so that's why they want to use him. So
yeah, and I think that's quite true. It's sort of like, and the days are sort of gone where people come to me and you're sort of competing with other designers because they want to sort of see who's going to come out the best price or whatever. People now come to me because they want me to design it, and that's what's so lovely. So it's really about deciding what is your edge, what area do you want to get into, what sort of design do you want to do, and sticking with that, because people are going to pay more and attracted to you more if, you know, they want your creation. And then you have people waiting for you. You know, I have clients waiting to see me till next year, which is always lovely to have.
yeah. So I'm sure that you've got lots of questions. So who wants to start? Here we go.
Hi.
When you were talking about upholstering walls in linen and other materials, how do you actually do that?
Yeah, well, it's actually a very traditional way of decorating. It was done a lot in the Victorian times. A lot of the old English houses have upholstered walls, often in silk. So what they do nowadays is a couple of systems. Normally, but you do have to have a bit of a shadow line at the top. There are panels that are split battens on the back. So they're just big panels that are padded and upholstered, and you just hang them on the split batten. As long as you have room to lift up over that panel, so it needs to give you a bit of a shadow line. There is a company in Sydney who now has this magnetic system where you actually screw metal bars, you know, flat bits of metal to the wall, and there's really strong magnets on the back of the panels, and so they just go and magnetise, which the one down in Berry with all those linen walls is actually just magnetised to the wall, and that way it can be the full height of the ceiling. So a couple of tricks.
Okay.
I was just going to ask the same topic. Do they come in different widths, or is it sort of a set width with like the size of the panel?
It doesn't come in anything, it's all custom. Yeah, so the whole idea of, you know, it's visually quieting and controlling the space. So having something that fits is the best, yeah. So a little short panel that's not quite wide enough is going to look like a rug that's too small. It's horrible. Yeah.
And do you get that from people who do wallpapers?
Upholsterers. Upholsterers, yeah.
Who else has got a question?
The little girls' room that had the custom heating photo.
Yeah.
I noticed that the bed was placed in front of the window. Can you just talk me through your reasoning? Like, was it the shape of the room that dictated that? What was it?
Here, do you want the truth? Or do you want...
For the photo.
It was for the photo. Yeah. Because it's for the photo, because I wanted to show all the elements in that room. So that bed actually was sort of around the wall that way. The most important thing in a kid's bedroom is that there's a lot of floor space. So you don't want to bed out in the middle of the room because they need lots of room to play. So that room was away, but yeah, it was just moved there for the photo. Good catching. Yep.
Have you had a circumstance where people haven't liked what you've delivered? And if so, what do you do about that?
Repeat that.
I was just asking
Yeah.
whether you'd ever delivered something that somebody didn't like, and if so, what do you do about that?
Well, change is a scary thing to people, especially things that they've never imagined. And also because I push the clients to create spaces that are the best of themselves. And if they could do it themselves, it would be nothing like that. So you have to carefully guide a client through it. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen a lot like the TV shows where you just come in and you transform the space and they come in and it's finished, which is fine. It's normally piece at a time. It's a colour. Can you imagine, like in that Mirabelle space where it was that turquoise, if a client went in, there's nothing in it, they go, oh my God, I hate it. So it's like a gradual process. So I'm there when it's done, when things are delivered, to set them up to go, oh, isn't this fantastic? Look how this works. This is so great because it's going to go with all these other things. So to help guide them through it. So hopefully that sort of helps there. Because sometimes, and I know other designers who are just like, let something be delivered. And so you have a room, the first piece that comes is this bright red chair, which in the entire scheme is going to work beautifully, but that's the first thing they see. They unwrap it and go, it's awful, I can't stand it, that's all I see. So they've already got it in their mind, they hate it. That's a really hard process to then turn them around to like that. So you have to be there and be so excited by it and say why it works, so you do it that way. Very occasionally it gets to the point where they just, I can't live with that. Now they've accepted sort of what you've done, so depending on what else you're doing there, it's normally like, I might change it for just cost or something like that, but it's like, yeah, depending on the client, but it doesn't happen a lot, yeah.
Do you do spot checks to see if they've changed anything after you've finished a job?
I actually have cameras set up in every house, and if they move, a buzzer goes off. How dare you live in that space? Yeah.
Who else has got a question?
The cabinetry or the cabinet in your townhouse,
Yeah.
what was that? What's the fabrication of that? Like,
Well,
Repeat that. Sorry.
yeah, what material was used in the
Yeah.
cabinet that you have in your townhouse?
the axolotl finishes are done just on a basic kitchen ply. It's sort of like a
Yep.
waterproof ply that they use in kitchens. But the way axolotl works, those finishes, because they're like hand rendered or sprayed or whatever, once they're done, you can't cut them, you can't screw in them, you can't anything. So you have to entirely build the kitchen, put in all the hardware, all the hinges, and totally take it apart, then number all the pieces, ship it to Axolotl, they paint it all and bring it back and have it all refinished. It's a very expensive process to do it, but it's beautiful to get that because nothing can be done after that. And then because it's a hand-done finish, if you want something added, it's not really going to match. So that's how you do it. But it's just a good basic kitchen board that you'd use everywhere
And
else.
is that the same fabric? Was that the same in the bathroom as well, that cabinet in the bathroom?
No, that cabinet was, it was the same. It was just a ply, MDF board that was just routed, because it's a sprayed finish. Because the MDFs withstand the water a lot better. You wouldn't want to put a lot of real wood in a bathroom unless it was quite big and ventilated. So you sort of need to protect it from waterproofing, So MDF.
I was just wondering with some like the houses that you've had there, does a client initially approach you and say, I want that entire house done at the same time? Or if they, I guess, ask for it or think that they'd like it done in stages, how do you, I guess, suppose, think in your mind, all right, well, I'll do that because then over there I could do that? Or I guess, what's your thinking process?
Well, you can sort of see my interiors are a whole combination of furniture and texture and colours, and it's sort of like something I have to visualise as a whole architectural story of a project first. So if someone says I want a room done, I don't do that. It's either I design the entire space or, you know, I don't do the job. That doesn't mean they have to do it all straight away. We can do it in stages, and often because you're dealing from the planning level, I design the whole concept, and not a piece of furniture is bought for a couple of years. You know, so it sort of works its way that way. But you sort of have to know where you're ending up to know where you're going. And so if you're doing pieces gradually, not everybody has the budget to do everything straight away, but you know that the pieces you're going to buy are just going to add to that. Sometimes the clients will tell me, okay, I have this chunk of budget at this stage, what are the most important things we should do first? And you can divide it that way. But yeah, it's a gradual process. But if they say, I just want a room, or I just want a colour scheme, I won't do it. It has to go to somebody else. You can sort of see, if I just painted the walls, I mean, it's not going to do anything. It's about what goes in it that makes that whole space. Remember one of the, like the second Federation house I showed you, the client said to me, with the really dark walls and that extension, the client said to me, oh, a bit scared about the colours, can I see samples up on the walls? Which I never do. So, okay, I put the samples up on the wall. So you've got this old, dirty, peach-coloured wall with this bit of green on it. It's like, and a bit of colour in there, and it's like, and they called me that night and they said, we hate everything. I said, okay, fine, but now wait till it's finished. It's like, what can you tell? I mean, you can't tell from that. What are they? If they were colour experts, they wouldn't need me, you know. Good luck. Yeah, so, yeah, you just have to be strong with them.
What's the longest? Oh my God! What's the longest a project has taken, or has been the most challenging? And is there a story about why something took so long?
The longest, you know, when I used to work in theatre, the best thing about that was you're working, day, night, whatever. Opening night, it's over. It's fantastic. Clients never die. They go on and on and on and on, which can be great. You can have wonderful relationships, but they call you and say, you know, I need tissues for my bathroom. What do you think I should do? And, you know, it just, they really sort of get to a point where they sort of can't make decisions without you, or they're guided. So, which is good. It goes on, and obviously some clients have done 3 or 4 homes for us, so that sort of goes on. So, yeah, it never really stops. So, I guess an average I would work with a client would be 2 years. Yeah. So. What was the second part of the question?
Oh, I was more just wondering if there's been a project that dragged on for certain reasons, or something that's been extra challenging.
The thing is, in which you have to explain to clients at the beginning, is there's going to be tons of problems. Everything's going to go wrong, and that always happens. It's about renovation. It's about you know, working with old buildings, construction. There's always going to be things you don't think about. But the idea is that you solve those things as they come up. You have a good team that can work on these things and solve them. It's not going to be perfect, but you're going to stand behind it and then make those sort of things happen. So it's a struggle sort of the whole way, and they sort of get used to it. And a lot of my clients are too busy to do it themselves, so you take on the pressure. So there's only a certain amount that they know that you're going through. Sometimes you have a lot of problem with vendors and have to order things 3 times, things that are going to be 4 weeks, take a year, you know, things like that, which are awful, but
And you just deal with that, you don't even let that get through.
Well, you sort of have to, it's all about, like any relationship, it's communication. So as long as you're letting people know and understand, it's not like, okay, your house is going to be finished this day, the day before you call them and go, oh, it's not going to be finished. You have to tell them as you're going. So it's that communication. People understand it. People don't like shock, but if you tell them, they may be disappointed, but they'll understand. So it's opening the communication, yeah.
I don't know, I don't like this thing. I know that with the townhouse one that you showed us, how you did that from the start with the developers and stuff. Do you do many new builds, or is it mostly people like, well, the Federation houses and stuff?
I do both.
Both?
Yeah, both. So people get me in for different projects at different things, which I think is good. I hope I am not pigeonholed. I've done a lot of traditional homes, and I like to pick up on that, but I've done a lot of contemporary homes too. Sometimes the client gets me in before the architect, before anybody, and we visualize the whole thing and come up with the whole scheme. So I act with the client as the client when we meet with the architect, and so I can brief them really well. The architects love it because it's a very educated meeting. We sort of know what we're doing. We sort of know what the look, all those answers, those questions are answered already, but yeah, it's everything.
Do you prefer those ones, or do you have a preference?
I like a challenge, I like a change.
Yeah.
I like it to be different. So yeah, if someone comes to me with a picture and they go, this is the look I want here, I go, oh, I know a really good designer that you could work with that does that look. You know, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in creating them within that space. Yeah.
How many jobs would you take on in like a 12-month period, or would you be doing it at the same time?
As the business has got bigger, the projects get bigger, and so we take on less. We can be a lot more selective. So we have so much work. I take on about one new concept a month. Yeah, so we have people waiting till next year at the moment. You know, and projects are all at different stages. So we have about 17 current projects going at the moment, so at different stages and different capacities, yeah.
And how many, or how big is your team of people that work with you?
Last week it was 5, this week it's 3, so I'm looking for more people. Yeah. Yeah, no, they didn't bring in Apple, and so I fired them. No, I didn't. No, people were moving on to different things, but yeah, I'm looking for staff at the moment.
Just on that, so when you're looking to hire somebody, what are you looking for?
Well, there's different roles. The idea is because people come to me because they want me to design their space. So I'm looking...
sorry, I mean in relation to staff.
I understand that.
Sorry.
Yeah. So it's sort of like I need to take away everything from me except the design process. So I have people that, you know, can do all the drafting and the drawing and all that sort of stuff. But at the moment, I'm looking for someone that can take a little bit of that design detail for me. So it's sort of like, although I would be conceptualizing it, say I've got this area that's a bathroom, kitchen, laundry, and I need that space reworked. They can sort of work on that, guided by me. If we're adding another room to a space, it's sort of like, this is what I'm sort of looking for, this is the rest of the house, pull some stuff for that. You know, so all those sort of little bits like that. So I need someone that's organized, somebody with a bit of AutoCAD knowledge, someone with a little bit of design experience, because they'll also be, you know, I say I just need this type of table, so a bit of knowledge of vendors, but that they'll sort of learn, but yeah, to sort of work in. So that's what this role would be.
It's like getting a mini you.
Do you have people that you draw inspiration from, or people in the industry who you're really inspired by, or in the past or current, or both?
I think you have to build up your visual library as much as you possibly can. I like to look at everybody's work. I like to look at every period of work. I like to look at fashion. I like to travel. It's sort of like whatever influence you can take. And often with social media, it all starts to look the same. It all starts to look white. It all starts to look that repetitive look. So looking outside of interior design too. But looking back to some of the classic old American designers and, you know, some of the Italian designers, it's fantastic to get that influence, and you know, mid-century designers. So, but everything. I remember I used to do it more when I was living in Miami, where I'd be on the treadmill and I'd sort of watch some video hits, because it's sort of like, it's the latest colours, the latest fashion, the latest spaces, you're sort of seeing that, and that's influence. You're going, oh, that's a cool little thing. So drawing from that, trying to expand your mind rather than looking at the same all the time, which Australia can become. Yeah. You're welcome.
All right, this might be our last one, if that's all right, guys.
Better be good.
Do you have a favourite project that you've done?
It changes, yeah. So at the moment, my favourite is that big sandstone house that I showed you that I'm doing. It's going to be, you know, really amazing. Like, I'm so excited when I look at that board of all those colours. I just can't wait. Where the client has to go, calm down, calm down. You know, so, you know, seeing that all together. And when you're given such spectacular architecture to start with, you know, that's really exciting. So I get excited about everything I do. So at the moment, that is my favourite.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I think we've seen enough and heard a lot today, and I hope that everyone can draw something from this. I certainly have. I've really enjoyed hearing Brett and seeing all these beautiful and wonderful projects. So the only thing I was going to probably contribute as well is how you said that you often get inspiration from a lot of things and a lot of places, and that's you guys. You've always, as you've talked to me through, this semester, you've said, I've actually got my inspiration from here, I've seen this bit and I'm taking it from there. That's just fantastic. That's how your mind just develops and grows, and you can end up being like Brett and just, drawing one thing out of one image, or one thing out of one interior, or one thing out of one building. It's just those little things that just will help you grow. So I hope that Brett's brought all that to life, and to your excitement, and to this fantastic course that you're doing, and you're all going to end up exactly like this gentleman, and I think we'll give him a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Kiss on microphone.
Yeah. Alrighty.
You all have a-
So.